Hey girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be a weekly reading vlog. It has been a while since I have done a weekly reading vlog and I am starting this on a Saturday, so I don't know how long the week will go for or if it'll even go like until next Saturday. We'll just have to see, but the last two vlogs that I made were very thematic. One of them, I took 3 different genres and started a new series from each genre to kind of taste test and see if I wanted to start and continue those series. The next one was reading 3 hyped horror books, and I did have a lot of fun doing those, and I have more plans to do similar videos like those. However, I just kind of wanted to do like a more laid back vlog this week because I am very much a mood reader. So I just like to kind of see where my reading takes me and just do a fun weekly reading vlog. So that's what we're going to be doing. Also, I'm kind of jumping into this rather late because it is the 11th today, and the magical readathon has been going all month long and I have not really started it yet. Haven't really read any books that would really count for the challenges because I think you're supposed to do them in order. So I'm also going to be like impromptu starting that, seeing if I can complete at least some of the prompts. Month-long readathons normally really stress me out. Like I feel I do a whole lot better with weekend ones or weekly ones, but a whole entire month with like a planned TBR stresses me. So I just wrote the prompts down in my bullet journal and just kind of gonna see if I can knock a couple of those off this week as well. But let's just go ahead and chat about the books that I am planning on reading this week or period of time, however long this vlog goes for. So first things first, the book that I am currently in the middle of is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I actually read the first book in this series for that vlog I mentioned earlier about starting 3 new series, and I just went ahead and picked up this next book from my library because I did end up enjoying the first book. I enjoyed the second half of the first book in specific. Not a big fan on retellings, so the retelling part of that first book was kind of boring for me, but at the end I was curious to kind of see where this series goes, and I have read both Throne of Glass and House of Earth and Blood, so I figured why not start this series because I hear a lot of people say that this is their favorite Sarah J. Maas series. Still undetermined if that'll be the case for me or not, but I am having a lot of fun reading it. I'm on page 366 of this one, so I'll just, you know, still be taking my time reading this one. It is very large. So this is also kind of my book that I have kind of designated for my lunch breaks at work. And then also like right before I go to bed, because it's just a very like fun book as someone who reads like a lot of horror and adult fantasy, which can sometimes get like, this is adult fantasy too, but this just has a different feel than like the Poppy War, where it's just like less weighty and more like character and romance driven. So that is why this is kind of my designated book for those specific purposes. And it technically could have worked for the first prompt on the magical readathon, which was the novice path entrance, read a book with a map, but I think I technically started it before September. So just to kind of try and not cheat, even though, I mean, it's a readathon, so it wouldn't be like the end of the world. I think I started it like the very last day of August, but anyway, we're not gonna count A Court of Mist and Fury for any of these, but for the novice path entrance, read a book with a map, I'm thinking of diving into one of my most anticipated releases of the year, which I'm shocked that I haven't gotten to yet. And that would be She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. And I mean, I think I know actually why I haven't picked this up yet, because I've heard so many comparisons to the Poppy War series, which is one of my favorite series of all time. I will say I am wondering if that's just due to the fact because they are both Asian inspired fantasy, and also at least for the US, the cover artist is the same. So Jacket Art by Young Shan, that's the same artist who did the Poppy War dust jackets. So I mean, that like it does look very similar in some ways, a lot more vibrant, but I'm really excited. So, and I know sometimes because I feel like I'm going to love something and I don't want to rush into it, I often put off my most anticipated releases. So this does have a map in it, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, this does have a map in it, so that would work as well as I do also have the audiobook right now from Libby. I was on wait for it from my library because while I did want to get the physical copy, I actually did this with the Poppy War. And honestly, since Libby is free through your library, I try and do this for a lot of my fantasy now, and even just like a lot of books in general now, especially ones that maybe don't have like English names or like English origins, because I would like to pronounce the names correctly, and audiobooks are a great way of doing that. So I want to at least start this one with the audiobook alongside. So I do have to start this one this week if I'd like to do that, because otherwise I'll be put back in line on Libby and then it'll be several more months before I can get to this one. So I am going into this one fairly blind with only the comparisons to, I think, Mulan and the Poppy War, so I'm very excited to pick this one up, hoping to also get to this week. We'll see if I get around to anything else this week. Those are both two very large adult fantasies, so, you know, might not be able to get to anything else, but if I do have a lot of library books at the moment, so I'll probably try to get to one of those. Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard I've been meaning to get to for a while, as well as Kingdom of the Wicked. I believe its sequel comes out soon, and I think that's a duology, so I'd like to pick this one up sooner rather than later. So those are kind of maybe some of the books that I want to pick up. But I'm a mood reader, so we'll see. You know, it is fall. Well, at least it's not technically fall, but it is September, so basically. So I might pick up some horror, might pick up some thriller. We'll just have to see, just kind of see what I'm in the mood for this week. But that's going to be it for this introductory clip. I don't have a lot going on this weekend. Me and my partner were debating maybe going to see Shang-Chi again in theaters. We saw it last weekend, absolutely loved it. It's a top 3 Marvel movie, I think, for both of us. I'd have to check with him. I'm pretty sure it is for him. It is for me, and we want to see it again. So we tentatively might do that. Other than that, not really planning on doing anything other than reading. So yeah, let's go ahead, get this vlog started. I will talk to you all in the next clip. So it's like halfway through the week, so I thought it would be a good time to hop on and give a reading update. I have made progress in several books. It has honestly been a very good reading week. So yes, when I talked to you last time, I was reading A Court of Mist and Fury. I've already returned the copy to my library and I did finish that one. I enjoyed it so much more than I enjoyed the first book in that series. So much so that I did go ahead and pick up the third book in the trilogy, which was not necessarily like on my list of reading plans for this week, but I just felt with how the last one ended, I really wanted to pick up the final book in the trilogy. And then of course I have the other two, A Court of Frost and Starlight and then A Court of Silver Flames, to have those on deck just in case I just want to fly through the whole series. I'm also still currently reading She Who Became the Sun, and I am enjoying this one. I will say I'm really glad that I'm reading this one physically as well as audiobook at the same time, because it is definitely not one I would suggest for those new to adult fantasy or new to fantasy in general, because it is very complex. And it definitely doesn't have like a lot of info dumps, a lot of explanation about the world, the scenario, everything going on. It's very confusing. I'm on page 124. I am really enjoying it. The writing is very beautiful and I'm very, very intrigued. I have a feeling based on pacing on this one, I'm going to enjoy it a little bit more once I get to like the midpoint, because there's a lot of time jumps that have happened in the first 100 pages, which combined with me not knowing the world at all just made this one a little bit confusing. So caveat for that, it is definitely one where you want to put your full attention into it, and that for me, definitely listening along with the audio while I'm reading physically has really helped me for that. Like I said, I'm still enjoying it, but it's definitely not one where I can like fly through it. I really need to take my time with it, but I am enjoying it so far. This will probably last me the rest of the week just at the pace I'm going, which I'm fine with. It's about 400 pages, so yes, page 100, so I'll try and finish this one by the end of the week, but no promises. I'm really enjoying taking my time with this one. And then as for A Court of Wings and Ruin, this one very much so very differently paced than She Who Became the Sun. It's obviously the third in a trilogy, so I'm very used to the characters, the world, and it's also, this one feels a lot more fast-paced than the second book, which I really did enjoy the second book. We'll have to see how everything kind of wraps up in this one. I'm a little concerned because we've gotten like 200 pages, I'd say, into it. I'm on page 195 and we haven't really gotten, we're not even starting to build up like the main conflict of this book, and I think it's like 600 pages. It looks a lot smaller than the last one, but I think the pages in this one are thinner than the pages in the last one, which makes it feel like a smaller book, but we'll have to see. This one I'm definitely flying through a whole lot faster because, like I said, I'm used to the world and it's just a very addicting series. So that is pretty much it for what I'm currently reading at the moment. I'm pretty much keeping it to 2 books. Honestly, lately I've been in the habit of reading a lot more than 2 books at a time, but because both of these are adult fantasy, I think sticking with 2 is fine for now, but I'm really enjoying both the books that I'm reading. I just wanted to come on and give a quick midweek update, and I will talk to you all in the next clip. morning. I am back with some reading updates for you all. I did finish one of the books that I have been reading this week, and that would be She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This was definitely a very interesting reading experience because this is one of the books that I feel like I had the highest expectations for this year. It was one of my most anticipated releases. It was receiving a lot of comparisons in a good way to The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, which is one of my favorite book series. So I was just hyping this one up a lot in my head. So I was going in with that really big expectation, which I was definitely trying not to do, but it's just, you know, human nature to, if something is compared so heavily to one of your favorites, you kind of start having that comparison in the back of your head. So upon starting this one, it was a very mixed bag for me. And I think I mentioned it before how I wouldn't recommend this one for any beginners to fantasy, or especially adult fantasy, because this one it can be very confusing at the beginning. I'd say there are a lot of different aspects that make at least me feel that way. I would say this is a very political based fantasy and also a very military based fantasy, but more military strategy than actual like fights and battles, I noticed from reading this whole entire book, as well as especially in the first half of the book, but pretty much throughout the whole entire book, there are lots of time skips and scenes where you would expect to see in certain things or scenes that you'd expect to read about, but happen like between scenes or off page, and you're just kind of noticed that you missed them and that they've already happened when you get to the next chapter or the next scene. So definitely some of those pacing things are very confusing, and it's definitely, I feel like, very different than a lot of other fantasies I'd read. I feel like if I describe in detail the narrative of this story, you might be able to figure out in a typical traditional story which scenes would be focused on, which beats would be focused on, and this one definitely felt very different than that. I will say I was reading the dust jacket, and it says that Shelley Parker Chan was a diplomat and international development advisor in Southeast Asia for over a decade, where she became addicted to epic East Asian historical TV dramas. After a failed search to find English language book versions of these stories, she decided to write her own. So perhaps that accounts for why the narrative of this story kind of felt at times very different to me, because that's not something that I'm familiar with. I've never watched an East Asian historical TV drama, and I am sure that there are lots of differences in like traditional storytelling and storytelling like mechanisms between like more of an Eastern and a Western lens. So again, I don't think that was bad, but it was very interesting to be reading like a period of time in our main character's life, and then the next chapter you realize that a lot of time has passed. It did make it hard for me in the beginning of this book. I would say the first 100 pages, definitely I would say the most confusing, and the ones where I was most trying to, I would reread pages, go back and reference something that happened in an earlier chapter to try and wrap my head around the world and what is happening. But by the end of this, I was really enjoying the story and very intrigued to see where the story is going. I think it's a duology, but regardless, why I said it was such like an interesting story to read was because it definitely did not have any of the expectations that I put on it myself. So I think once I read past that and got over that and really got invested in this story, I was really intrigued and I did really enjoy it. So I'm actually going to read the synopsis of this book that was in the dust jacket, just because I feel like I just want to set this story up the right way, and especially because I, as a fantasy reader, an avid fantasy reader, had some troubles getting into this one. I don't want to try and stumble over trying to explain it perfectly when the dust jacket already does so. So this is set in 1345 China. In a famine-stricken village on a dusty yellow plain, two children are given two fates: a boy, greatness; a girl, nothingness. In 1345, China lies under harsh Mongol rule. For the starving peasants of the Central Plains, greatness is something found only in stories. When the Chu family's eighth-born son, Chu Chongba, is given a fate of greatness, everyone is mystified as to how it will come to pass. The fate of nothingness received by the family's clever and capable second daughter, on the other hand, is only as expected. When a bandit attack orphans the 2 children, though, it is Chu Chungba who succumbs to despair and dies. Desperate to escape her own fated death, the girl uses her brother's identity to enter a monastery as a young male novice. There, propelled by her burning desire to survive, Chu learns that she is capable of doing whatever it takes to stay hidden from her fate and claim her brother's given destiny as her own. I have kind of also heard a lot this being kind of compared to Mulan, and I can see how that would be based on the synopsis on the dust jacket. However, I would say other than like a very brief situational circumstance happening within the first 3 or 4 chapters of the book, definitely doesn't have those vibes at all. Definitely a different story. However, it is very interesting. Our main character is posing as a man, and you kind of see throughout the novel, and I think you'll see maybe more in the second one, you never get this girl's real name at the beginning. She's nameless until she takes over her brother's name and brother's identity, and you kind of see throughout that as the main character kind of distances herself more and more from, it's not she is necessarily a woman pretending to be a man, it's Zhu is really taking over that identity, so much so where she does use she pronouns for her own point of view chapters for herself, but other characters, obviously, since they think Chu Chongba is a man, they use he pronouns, but you kind of see our main character starts to really embrace that in a way where they don't really see themselves as a woman, even like on their own private time. So I think that's really interesting. I feel like we're diving into that a whole lot more than like Mulan did, obviously. I also thought that this did a really good job of, you have 2 main points of view, and each point of view is on a different side of this war between a group of Chinese rebels and then the Mongolian rule. So I think that was really good. There were 2 separate points of view. I did like one a whole lot more than the other, but it was really interesting. I thought it was a very fleshed out and dynamic, and really portrays the nuanced depiction of 2 sides of a war, because obviously in real life, war is not just like the good guys and the bad guys, black and white, like for the most part with things like that. There's a lot of nuance and depth, and it's very interesting to see the political mechanizations of everything in this book. So definitely a very interesting reading experience. Not one where even if you love it and it's going to be your favorite book of the year, I don't think you could race through it like in one day. It's definitely one that requires like careful reading and just really absorbing all of like the very heavy political and military sort of lore and history and things like that. It is fantasy and there are some fantastical elements, but it is very grounded in reality. I feel like it's not like there are dragons flying around or lots of people with magical powers or anything like that. It's very much very military focused, very political focused, but it is still fantasy, and I had a really good time reading it, and I'm very glad that I can say that I read this one. It's always fun to finally catch up and read some of your most anticipated releases of the year, so I really enjoyed this one. If that sounded like anything you would enjoy, I highly recommend. Again, I also would highly recommend listening to the audiobook or reading the audiobook alongside with the physical version, just because I found that super helpful, because I am very much a product of Western society, and most of the names in here, most of the locations, definitely not ones that I feel like if I would have just read it physically, I would have understood the pronunciations correctly. Still pretty hard because tonal, like the tonal languages of a lot of Eastern languages are very hard for someone who hasn't learned them. So I definitely would recommend even listening to maybe a couple chapters so you get to kind of like what everything's supposed to sound like. Highly recommend that reading experience. As for my other book that I'm reading over the course of this week, A Court of Wings and Ruin, still making my way through this one, and I am on page 300, so very much I feel like almost exactly in the middle, because this is over 600 pages. I am still really enjoying this one. I will say I'm not enjoying it as much as the second, but I am really enjoying it, and the new characters that are added, or not trying to spoil the characters that aren't necessarily new but the way that they're interacting with the story has changed. I find that very interesting, and I'm really intrigued to kind of see more about that, and then the continuation and how things, especially in this book, are going to influence the continuation, because again, this is a series that is a trilogy, and then it has like a bridging novella, and then it has another series underway. So yeah, I am enjoying this one. Definitely a very different feel from She Who Became the Sun. This one is very much like more of a high fantasy with lots of fae, magic systems, what have you, and then also like just a heavy romance component to it. So very different vibes, but I'm hoping to get a little more into this. I'd like to finish it by the end of the weekend, but it is very hefty, so we'll have to see on that. And then since I did finish She Who Became the Sun, I would definitely like to pick up another audiobook because I am mostly reading this one physically, so I always like having an audiobook and a physical book to kind of switch off back and forth between. So I'll probably be looking for an audiobook to fit in for the end of this week as well. But that is it for this update, and I will update you all later. Alright, so it is Sunday. It is time to wrap this weekly reading vlog up, and I actually read a whole lot of pages this week, which was very exciting. I definitely didn't get to all the books that I wanted to at the beginning of this week. I definitely need to at least Kingdom of the Wicked and potentially Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard. I need to read both of those very soon because their library holds, they're going to expire soon. So that'll probably be something for next week, but I didn't get to them this week because I did get very, very wrapped up in this fantasy series. So I already returned the second book, but that was A Court of Mist and Fury. That was the first book that I finished this week, and I really enjoyed it. I've said it before, I feel like on this channel, I will say it again. The first book in the ACOTAR series was just okay for me. I'm not a retellings person. Usually they're not like my favorite sort of genre or subgenre, if you will, but the ending of that one made me want to continue the series. So I did. Second book, I really enjoyed. However, I could see why other people might not enjoy that one because I would say it is probably one of the most character-driven installations in a series that I've ever read. There is like a larger plot that's kind of happening, but it happens very slow. There's a lot of training sequences, which I tend to really enjoy, and a lot of just character interactions, character relationships being developed, not just romantic ones, but like found family and friendships as well. So I really enjoyed that one, and I sped through that book. It was over 600 pages. I read it a lot faster than I anticipated reading it, and I really enjoyed it, so much so that I pretty much immediately picked up the third book in the series. This one, I definitely want to say I think the pacing is a little bit better. This one definitely has more plot to it, and we really see like the high stakes of the conflict. The high stakes of the conflict is there for the whole trilogy, but you really start to feel like the pressures of it towards the end of the second book, and in the third book as well. You're really seeing the stakes are higher than ever before. There are just a lot of new characters being introduced, as well as characters that you maybe seen briefly in earlier installations of the series coming in to serve a bigger role in the series, which I feel like is pretty typical for Sarah J. Maas books. You'll see these characters maybe mentioned once, or they'll do a smaller role, but then they'll come back for like the final sort of showdown, what have you. So I am enjoying this one. not as much as the second one, at least not as much yet. I'm 51% of the way through this one, so definitely I can say overall pacing is better, but I do really enjoy scenes in books where there's just like a lot of character development. A lot of times I have noticed my favorite installation in a series is one where maybe not as much plot happens, but you really get like those deep dives and character development. So yes, I think unless something changes in the second half of this book, I'm still going to like the second book in the series better, but I'm really enjoying my time with this one so far. Again, it's another one that's like 600 pages, 600 plus pages. So I'm almost to page 400 on this one. So like already with these two books, I haven't even finished this one, but the second book and then now this one, that's like about 1,000 pages that I've read this week so far. So that's pretty good. And then in between those two installations, I did manage to pick up a book that I've been highly anticipating that I talked about very much in depth last clip, so I won't spend too long on it. But She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I really enjoyed this one. If you like historical fantasy that definitely has a lot of military and political elements to it, with definitely more of like a grim dark feel that can be like a little bit hard to follow at times, but like the writing is so beautiful, so poetic. This one definitely is a very quotable book. There are a lot of quotes in here that just really resonated with me. I did enjoy this one. I feel like this is one, I think it's a duology, it's definitely a series where I'm going to keep on enjoying the books more and more as the series progresses. And I don't know actually if I've mentioned this during this vlog or not, but this is also very sapphic, and it also has a lot to deal with gender expectations and gender roles of the time, talking about those sorts of relationships. And our main characters, plural, there are several different characters in here that are kind of exploring like what their gender and sexual expression means to them in terms of society and how that influences their very being and who they are, and lots of very interesting discussions in here as well. Very interesting read. I'm really glad I got around to it, and I'm very glad to say that most of my anticipated releases of this year that I've actually picked up so far I've really enjoyed, and they haven't been a disappointment, so very glad for that. Also, the cover is absolutely stunning. I absolutely can't wait to check out the next book in this series. In terms of the magical readathon, which I did mention at the beginning of this vlog, I was going to try and attempt and see if I could complete it. Definitely more of like a casual sort of way, just seeing if my books that I were already going to read would kind of match up and fit the prompts. So for that one, the novice path, which is the entrance, read a book with a map, that was She Who Became the Sun. That worked for that. And then when I finish A Court of Wings and Ruin, that will be for Ash Torn Tree, a book that keeps tempting you. So once I finally finish that one, that will be 2 of the challenges done for the magical readathon, and then I just need to move on to Mist of Solitude, which is a standalone. So yes, doing good for that one. I don't actually think I need to complete all the challenges to succeed in the magical readathon this month, so we'll just see how many I can get moving on to the next week and the next vlog, seeing how many books and how many challenges for that readathon I can manage to knock off. But that is actually going to be the end of this vlog. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content from me. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Bye!